Hello, and welcome to Leadership Trail Mix. I am Miguel Oliveira, and for the next 5 to 10 minutes, we'll be together looking at one of the many ingredients that compose this art and science we call people leadership. Let me start with a public service announcement. This episode is the first one we're going to have two parts. The conversation with this guest was so good that I had to break it down. So today, and for the next episode, our guest is Eric Stone. His passion for business led him to an influential 26-year career at the iconic rental car company Enterprise Holdings. He led teams through challenging moments such as 9/11, the Great Recession, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Great Resignation. A few years ago, he retired from Enterprise and founded Clear Path Ventures, which is specialized in guiding young professionals and businesses as they navigate their path to success. In 2023, he released the book Jumpstart Your Workplace Culture, a roadmap for igniting high performance, which you can find anywhere books are sold. It's about culture that I'll be talking about today and in our next episode. Welcome to Leadership Trail Mix, Eric.
Miguel, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's jump right into it. And I would like to start with some definitions that I believe will set the foundation for the chat we're going to be having today. So can you share with us your definition of culture and high performance?
I can. I would say I'd give you three easy words, in my opinion, for culture. So culture would be behaviors in action. I think that's probably one of the simplest versions that allows people to get a good understanding of what it is. You could also throw in when organizations have no gaps between their values that are there and the behaviors that exist. That's really, really special. And maybe a nice comparison, Miguel, is if you look at personal branding. So personal branding are what people, the things people say about you when you're not in the room. And in culture are really the behaviors that exist when leadership's not in the room. So there's this little parallel when you think about it. Now, high performance is, in my opinion, slightly different. And that's, when you have these set of shared values and beliefs that drive the right behaviors, creating a consistent experience and desirable outcomes is usually when this high performance tends to come in.
Okay, wow, that's awesome. That's a very different definition from what I heard before. Thank you.
You bet.
So combining the two, your book mentions three different leadership abilities when it comes to a high-performance culture: create, ignite, and elevate. So here comes a twofer for you, two questions in one. How do you describe each of them? And if they happen in this order, what indicates that a leader is ready to move to the next phase?
Yeah, good questions. So the create part is really where everything becomes established. I actually call that a sense that the roadmap or the summit of everything what you have. And that's where you're trying to create clarity as you create this. And to me, the creation is, have you designed the values that are going to drive your decision making? Have we all held hands on that? Is there a philosophy that's really important? And so for me, and we might even talk about it today, my philosophy has always been about these 5 key factors of engagement that really drive the most out of your employees, and great engagement tends to lead to really good outcomes. Are they defined short and long-term goals? Do we have an idea of those short and long-term goals, and what truly would be the vision of this organization and what we're trying to do is the creation? And that's usually with a group of individuals together. The ignite is once you commit. So we have now committed to these 3 to 5 key priorities that exist. And what are we going to do to reinforce this, to create that spark, hence jumpstart with the theme of the book? What are those things? And that's where rollout is so important in an organization. And then the elevate is as you begin to have some of these victories. So you have some of the victories that you're starting to celebrate, and you're going to raise it to another level. In my opinion, usually through a training initiative. Those things, maybe new technology comes out and we've got to educate everybody on how to elevate the customer experience. And I always say that you don't rise to the level of your expectations and goals, you fall to the level of your training. And so from the elevation standpoint, that's the kind of create, ignite, and eventually shifting gears to elevate.
Going a little bit personal, Eric, would you be comfortable sharing with us most, or at least one of the most challenging culture crises you faced as a leader and how you overcame it? And connecting to your prior answer, was it at the create, at the ignite, or at the elevate phase?
Yeah. So for me, I think probably the biggest challenge, I was taking over an organization, where it was very complex. So plans were extremely complicated, and we needed to find a way to see what we could do to simplify. The belief was not there. It's funny, sometimes over my shoulder, I'll have the word belief. No one believed that they could do it. It was always the analogy was it's harder here. It's just harder, and we all get a little personal sometimes, and we think our challenges are the only challenges. I think we'd all agree that everyone has them, just packaged a little bit differently. And so there were plus, of course, performance was not there. Now that did not mean that there were not talented people. It just meant bringing everyone together. It just wasn't happening. Too many naysayers. And so the approach that I actually share in the book really came from this experience. And I call it the hourglass approach, is how we did it and how we kind of move through the phases of what you're referencing. And it's actually over the shoulder above me. So it's going to be hard to see for those on video. But think of it as an hourglass. And my concept was an hourglass has the word OUR, hour, not eyeglass, that we both are wearing here, not an eye. And so on the upper part here of the hourglass is really this listen, observe, and learn phase where you're going to pull information from your clients, customers, stakeholders, board members, whoever you're trying to pull from. That's really all of this informational stuff that you need to do in order to gather the right information. And as the hourglass starts to bow out, is really where you begin to orchestrate and create really what we were talking about from a culture standpoint of how do we kind of synthesize all of the information a little bit easier. Now, Ali, as the hourglass bows out and gets to that where the sand comes through, is the commitment or clarity of these 3 to 5 key initiatives. We were referencing them as the commitments, those priorities that you want to get through. And then as you get commitment from everybody, it starts to bow out again. And this is where you're going to do the rollout, the training, the reinforcement to your organization. And as it lands on the bottom, that is where you assess. And so the assessment is however you might measure what you're doing, those goals that you set, and you're going to take a look at. Hopefully you've secured a few victories, as we mentioned along the way. 2 key pillars, as you notice, the left are mission, vision, values. The right are policies and procedures on your hourglass. Those are going to guide your decision-making process. And so the biggest challenge was that organization of which there was never really consistent success. We use the hourglass as an approach. Now, within that, it gets a lot more complicated because it's just not that easy, but that's a high-level view of the approach that we were trying to utilize. And if there were a few key things, it really would be simplification, addition by subtraction, taking things away versus adding until we could really execute that thing to a high level. And hence, I sometimes say lather, rinse, repeat, so you really get comfortable with it until you eventually elevate, which we talked about before.
I feel like some of the words you use there, simplify and subtract versus adding things to the plate, people are probably kind of itching to go buy your book because there are definitely things that we need so much in the current corporate environment. So thank you for sharing that. We live in this world where data matters, of course, but I tend to believe that data can tell you whatever story you want to hear. And it really depends on the questions you're asking the data to get an accurate story. And when it comes to culture, there is so much about perception into play, and perception becomes reality, and so much of what we call anecdotal. What have you seen organizations and teams adopt to measure organizational health that you believe got them the closest to an accurate diagnosis?
Yeah, it's such an important question. I don't know if anyone's mastered one of the reasons I decided to try to write the book. There were many, but when you would reach out and I would reach out to CEOs and say, how do you measure this nebulous topic? There were crickets, really people. But the one standard that really I think a lot of organizations have put their chips into, and it doesn't have to just be Gallup to give you an engagement assessment of your organization, but whether it's a pulse survey, engagement survey, whatever company you choose, there is a lot of research that says when you have engagement, it does lead to strong business outcomes. Gallup specifically says when you look at their top quartile versus the bottom quartile of engagement organizations, and they do thousands of organizations, there was a significant difference from those in the top 25%. And I think they had a 10% increase in customer service and loyalty when they had high level engagement. They had, I think it was 18% increase in sales productivity, 23% increase in profitability, 81% reduction in absenteeism. I think we could all use those numbers. And so I think now that doesn't tell the entire story. And one of the concepts later in my book I talk about is an approach to exactly your point. What else can you look at to get a baseline or check the health of your organization? I double down and tell organizations engagement in their customer experience or net promoter scores really need to be double weighted. And there are a few other things I recommend, but as they say, sometimes it's dealer's choice. It is up to the organization of what are those things that they feel are critical. But I would double weight the employee and the customer journey.
Good. All right. This is the end of part 1 of this amazing conversation about company culture. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or just want to say hi, send me an email, miguel@leadershiptrailmix.com. While we didn't have a call to action for this episode, I'm sure you can find one in the amazing content Eric shared with us. That's it. See you next time. Thank you for listening. Take care and talk soon.